Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you find yourself in this weird, wild, wacky world of ours, and welcome to the exciting installment of Darkness in Dublin. This evening's scene takes place just out in front of the Elysium building. The Elysium building it was called the Premier. I'll say it again. It was called the Premier Theatre, which was a former movie house, a former cinema in Dublin City proper, though it's fallen out of use since the 70s. Currently, it's being renovated via a company in order to serve as a new venue in order to go and see movies in a more glamorous setting. It is also serving temporarily as the Vampire Elysium. The building is known to be owned by Mr. Hennessy. Ryan, you will be walking up the steps to the Elysium proper before you will hear from directly behind you. Ah, Mr. Famo.
My ears twitch naturally like they do when I've been startled. I slowly turn about. Ah, Seneschal, I assume?
Yes. I have a question. Do you smoke, Mr. Famo?
It's one of those habits I dropped about 50 years ago.
I've often watched people when they smoke cigarettes, when they take in poison into themselves, and contemplate the fact. But tell me, what is it that you wanted me for?
Well, despite the gravitas of the situation, I've got some effort to not use the Seneschal everything is a flame button.
Excellent. I should start instituting a policy that if everything is not in fact on fire, if you use this button, you have to pay me some semblance of boon.
Well, that would make you mighty rich, of course.
He walks towards one of the. Basically, you're standing on the steps that lead up to the building. He walks towards one of the stone banisters that lead up to the building, and he leans against it and he says, "So, what is it that I can do for you?"
Well, via the grapevine, I recently heard of an exchange between you and Deimos. It wasn't exactly something pleasant, shall we say, and I would care to be provided with some context. In addition, I might also give you a certain deal, one that I'm sure you might find very juicy.
I'm listening. What do you require context to?
Well, naturally, Deimos being of my coterie is somewhat of a concern to me, and I heard passed on that you were, well, I wouldn't say threat to lives of people, because I'm sure that given the reasonable state of yourself, you would never make good on such a deal. Yes.
Mr. Davis made certain statements in front of the sheriff. These statements were that he, and he alone, possessed the power necessary to kill 5, count them, 5 lupines, who were aware of his presence, and that he intended to blood bond one of these lupines, an action that would almost certainly plunge us into outright and open conflict with them. So, you were right. I said to Mr. Deimos that in all honesty, I uttered a. How did I say this? I uttered a warning, or no, I said that if he was to fail, a group of lives, including your own, your coterie, was it, would be forfeit in order to impinge upon him the gravity of the situation, hoping the man would back down. He didn't back down.
Yes, it is unfortunate that our neonate friend here is, not exactly the type to understand when someone is being serious.
Ultimately, it is beyond. Not only is it beyond his capabilities, but yes, we interfered in the Shan pharmaceutical matter, frankly. However, at the moment, we do not possess the resources necessary to have a confrontation with a well-entrenched political organization who have resources, funding, and influences at their disposal. Because of your friend, we have lost several high-ranking ghouls located throughout the various political bureaus in this country. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Deimos has set this court back at least 8 months in our current plans and has weakened our influence significantly because prematurely, need I add, he decided to spit in these lupines' faces.
Hmm.
Now, eventually, we will deal with these lupines. We will extricate them. We will burn them out. But the fact of the matter is that we are already stretched dangerously thin, Mr. Famo, when it comes to dealing with actual immediate threats. And I did not need a new conflict. I didn't need four of our ghouls being dismissed. I didn't need the incompetence of this neonate who makes, shall we say, promises that he cannot deliver.
Naturally. This is a very interesting situation. Perhaps I could offer a solution, of course, but all in good time. Despite the fortunate situation, it is good of it that the wheels of mortal power move in such a fast manner. Sure that a man of your capacity is able to recover, but it is simply the insult, I'm sure.
It is not merely the insult, I will be frank with you. It is the fact that ultimately, as I have pointed out, and as I have pointed out correctly, as I have pointed out correctly, it is influence that needs to be expended. It is pawns that need to be moved around the board. He has set us back. He has not stopped us. He has merely made the game longer. And the fact of the matter is that I am dealing with Sabat in Waterford. I am dealing with a red lister running around the city doing whatever he may do. I am not in the humor to deal with the incompetency of some Sabat blooded reject.
Hmm. This is understandable. You are, of course, a busy man. Well, I'm sure you know as well as any winder the wheels of the great game. Our young neonate is clearly oblivious to such consequences, and he may have rendered upon the tower and his puppet strings. Hmm. Perhaps we might hold this blood as insurance.
The blood, you mean the lupine blood, yes?
Of course.
That is currently in the hands of the sheriff's office, I believe. Well,
Oh,
the sheriff requested it from Deimos. I assume that Deimos has actually followed through and given the damn thing. There was another issue
hmm.
when demanded in the name of our official positions to give us the information as to whom informed him as to Ireland's own and the lupine problem. He refused until we had to employ the discipline of dominate to get the information from him. I am not in the habit of asking twice when it comes for information. He refused to give me the name of the individual who gave him this information. I am not pleased.
Understandable. I'm sure that this will not carry off onto the rest of us in practice, of course.
You are the one who said you are in a coterie with this gentleman. You are a senior figure. You will correct his behavior.
This is understandable, but I do not believe I was given charge of such gentlemen.
Charge is an interesting matter, Mr. Famo. You have age. He does not. I am not giving you his life. I am not saying he is under your accounting. I am saying I would like you to steer him in a direction that is more palatable.
I nod quite clearly. This is understandable. Perhaps I can placate you by understanding that from now on such actions will be held under personal responsibility.
This is acceptable.
Now, regardless, perhaps in terms of this blood, it could act as insurance, either only in part or publicly to put Pentex and the gumbo that it is on slow cook, soften their metaphorical meat for the main course that you're likely, given the loss of your kin, dying to dig into.
The,
Realize.
pen, the Pentex issue is an interesting one. He reaches into his phone, or he reaches into his pocket and he withdraws a phone. And for the record, he presses a couple of buttons on the phone with his gloved hand, at which point your phone vibrates.
For a moment, I take my phone.
Basically, he sent you a text message involving 6 different reports that he's having 6 different members of Sharon Pharmaceuticals board of directors followed at the moment. Because yeah, you took down one of their main processing plants. They still have a number of other facilities littered throughout the city, and he'll say, We've been having several interesting individuals followed in order to ascertain more information. I've been able to do some very basic
Preliminary?
thank you, examinations on the entities that were being kept under lock and key, as it were, and they are. I will use the term monstrous because I believe that that is the most suitable phrasing.
Given the weight of the container, I would expect only as much from such a nefarious corporation.
So, but your point is interesting on the concept of slow cooking, as it were. Yes, the blood can be kept and the blood can be used in order to ascertain certain information. We've already been able to ascertain certain information from the blood. For example, the blood has an extra component to it that is not found typically in blood, a spiritual component that is also indicative to these creations that we found in the Cheyenne Pharmaceutical warehouse. So, I'm curious as to why it is that they wish to breed such creatures, but unfortunately, the information to that is not exactly forthcoming.
Yes, this is a rather concerning matter. After all, the majority of them, regardless of their intentions, are either, uh, what's the word? Not concerned with the conflict of our sex and sex, SECTS. I realize that in that accent it sounds bad. Uh,
Sex, yes.
they're not particularly concerned with us or are entirely mortal, which is interesting to say the least. What other influences could possibly be given to such a situation is concerning, shall we say. I realize you need to put this, someone to take this gumbo off the heat and slow down the boil in Dublin. You are, like you said, stretched rather thin. I have a method, as I'm sure you're probably aware, of, shall we say, ensuring that should any harm further come, the werewolf that possesses the blood that you are currently inspecting should suffer a most horrible death. And given the fondness I am sure that the servants of the worm have towards their fellow packmates, they might perhaps think again before they go around messing with other people's puppet strings.
The issue here is yes, that is a possibility. However, if that is a possibility, they will once again clamor for the destruction of Deimos. After all, he's the individual who robbed the blood.
Yes, as if there aren't enough people chasing after that young boy.
He made himself a target, Mr. Famo. No one else did.
This is true. Yeah, I realize that and understand it, but willing to take any action against Deimos, surely the blood will be used to give this person a horrible death. It really depends on their fondness of their kinship.
What you say is reasonable. I will speak to the sheriff and I'll have the blood given over to your safekeeping.
Of course, naturally, the older gentleman who seems to be leading them, despite his condescending demeanor, must be made aware of such actions and the inevitable fate of his friends.
I'll see to it that he is informed.
Yes, well, despite all of the damage they might have already done, this has certainly taken a weight off of your back, confidently at least. In this situation, we can, of course, assume that you are able to focus on other, more pressing matters.
I sense that you're about to put a price tag on this, Mr. Famo.
Well, come now, Seneschal. You, of all people, given your clan, know power is knowledge. In fact, I would go as far to say that knowledge is power. Wouldn't you agree?
What is your price?
Well, it's simple, really. I wish to offer you a tasty deal for your very own personal disclosure of any of my such services I render, even perhaps influence on whom I render such services to.
Hmm.
In exchange, Hennessy, given your reasonable and consistent nature, one which I share common goals with, some which I eventually, of course temporarily, I would like to be interested in extending my affiliation further and in time in degree. As such, I would ask for your public affiliation with you and your clan. I would be, of course, willing to speak to the good doctor in running the Nosferatu show, of course, but this is a matter I would probably concern with you yourself.
Very well. In exchange for what you have said, I will offer you the public friendship of Clan Nosferatu. Is that agreeable?
Positive. I nod my head.
Good. I will inform the sheriff that he is to surrender the blood to you. He should do so without much issue. He doesn't necessarily like meddling in the matters more occult and arcane than he has to. But I'll see to it that that is done. I was pleased to hear that you managed to acquire the documents at the auction yesterday evening.
Yes, that was a rather pleasing situation, though naturally it cut me quite deeply. There were other people interested in such an item, of course.
Yes. I myself was able to acquire the only thing that had any significant value to me, and even then, it was only because it was made by a dear friend of mine. Long since passed now.
Of course. Well, might I mention a little tidbit that you might be interested in?
By all means.
The painting, of course, of Van Gogh's Descent. He appears to have some sort of deep connection with the painting, and while I was fawning over that good text written by this Lazarus gentleman, I happened to notice that there was a few chains hanging off of that painting, ones that might be linked to his wraith.
That is a very interesting piece of information. Thank you, Mr. Vermeil. I will make the announcement before the Prince's court as to you being, considering the fact that you are technically autarchus, as in you do not correspond to a clan, you will henceforth be considered a member in good standing, not only of the Camarilla proper, but under the protection of Clan Nosferatu, and we will extend our public protections to you therein.
Naturally, the consistency of Dublin is something of good importance to me, and I wish to maintain the current regime. I extend my hand.
He shakes it. Once again, you can tell that there's a lot of potence there that he's not applying.
Yeah, I'm wearing gloves. Not that would help, but it helps me.
Good. All right. I have paperwork I need to see to. But it has been a pleasure speaking to you, Mr. Vermeil.
Pleasure as always, Seneschal. May you find your night to be most fruitful.
I have to head down to that damned auction for its third evening in order to oversee something, so we shall only hope that it is fruitful.
Perhaps you might see me there yourself.
In that case, I shall look forward to it. Good evening, Mr. Vermeil.
Good evening.
And on that note, we shall end our scene. Thank you, player, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. This has been another scene in Dynasty Dublin. Have a pleasant evening.